Hi there, Lindee Goodall here. We've talked about the buttonhole presser foot, and we've actually made a buttonhole, but I didn't tell you how to prepare your fabric. Now this machine makes beautiful buttonholes, but if you don't prepare your fabric properly, you won't have a professional result. So let's see what we need to do. So here's the sample I sewed in the lesson on sewing buttonholes, and if you look at the back, you can see I have some stabilizer on here. And this is just a lightweight tearaway, and it's a fusible. And I like to use the fusible because then I'm not worried about it shifting around or getting out of place, and it tears off easily. Also notice that I've sewn on 2 layers of fabric, and I have some interfacing in here. And it's very rare that you would sew a buttonhole on just 1 layer of fabric, and when you're making a garment you usually have interfacing. So this one too has been interfaced and has the stabilizer on the back, and you can see I've just sewn a long strip on the back. And this piece, if we can imagine that this is a front placket of a blouse, and I have a seam along this edge here, and we're going to sew the buttons in here. You want to make sure that the seam allowance is not bulky. So if we open this up, you can see that I've trimmed the seam allowance, and I've actually graded the seam. So the seam is quite narrow there. Here is my facing piece, and I've just serged the edge, and my interfacing is applied to that. And this extra row of stitching that you see is what we call understitching. And what that does is it keeps that facing underneath, and it folds it right along the edge, and you can see here that I haven't stitched up here, and it's just kind of not very clean. So that'll keep your edge clean, and it'll keep it from being bulky, and then you can mark the placement for your buttonholes. Now to do that, I have this really cool gadget, and you can just figure out your spacing, and there's some little marks on here, so if I wanted a 1/4 of an inch in, I can just line those all up, and then I can mark it with a water erasable or air erasable pen or chalk, whatever you like to use for marking that's temporary and will come right out. So that's pretty much that. I would, again, iron on the interface or the stabilizer to the back, and if this was a textured fabric or fuzzy fabric in any way, I would use a topping on the top. So that would keep my nap or texture down while I sewed the buttonhole, and this is a water soluble, so it pulls right off, and you can just sponge off the bits and makes a really beautiful buttonhole. So you need to prepare your fabric for the buttonholes, and it doesn't take a lot of work, and you'll have beautiful buttonholes that look like a pro did them.